Hey, what's up, and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today we're bringing it back to our monster movie madness marathon with Kong Skull Island, which of course is the second movie in the MonsterVerse universe of monster movies. It's also the most recent movie that has been released on disc and digital. Godzilla King of the Monsters comes out to digital next week, and this is part of my preparation to see it for the first time. This film is about a group of different people, like military people, scientists, photographers, conspiracy theorists, blah 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 blah, that show up at Skull Island to figure out what it's all about. And of course, King Kong is there and he causes destruction and blah 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 blah. You know the story. So let's talk about some good things to be found in this movie, and obviously visuals. Everything visually speaking is fantastic in this movie. From the graphic design of King Kong himself, amazing, the other monsters on the island, unbelievably great, to the lighting and the colors and the use of smoke. Just like Godzilla and their use of smoke and colors, there's a scene in this movie done a little bit differently, but it does the same type of thing. Smoke, colors, lights, epicness. Also, the cinematography, the camera work, and the way these shots are framed is really, really good. Obviously, the visuals as well as the cinematography, camera work, that kind of goes into the fact that it is edited together really well, and it is. Everything in this movie really shouts out visually stunning. There's only two things that I have to say about the visuals that I didn't like. One was the motion capture work of King Kong himself. Because they didn't have the genius of Andy Serkis to play the ape again, King Kong basically walks around like a normal person. It's like, hey guys, I'm King Kong. Oh, a helicopter, SWAT. Oh, an animal, SWAT. And you never really have the sensation that he's an animal instead of a human being. Apparently, Andy Serkis is the only kind of guy to play motion capture when it comes down to animals. Another thing that I didn't really care for when it came down to visuals was production design. One thing that Peter Jackson did really, really well in 2005's King Kong is production design. Apart from King Kong himself, apart from the visuals that were stunning in 2005 as is, Peter Jackson made you believe that the movie took place in the era of the 20s and 30s. He paid so close attention to costume and makeup and hair. However, this movie takes place in the 70s, something that I completely forgot about until I watched it again today. There is little to no production design value when it came down to convincing the audience that this took place in the 70s. I mean, from a completely random standpoint, the last movie that I saw was Almost Famous, which took place in the same exact era, and the production design in that movie was fantastic when it came down to the 70s. You really did believe that that's when it was taking place. These people look and feel and sound and act like they're in 2017. Those are the only complaints that I have about the visuals, and they really are small complaints, because at the end of the day, where it fails when it comes down to production and design, where it fails when it comes down to motion capture, it excels in other areas. My real complaints about this movie really come down to the story at hand and the characters and their roles or even functions when it comes down to this film. It seems like they had enough characters in there. They all play different roles. They all do different things in the film itself. But one thing I kept on noticing throughout the film is there's no real main character. The main character is what you need the audience to connect with emotionally, and there is no real character that fits that description. Maybe King Kong, but he's not really focused on that much in this movie. And because of that, you don't feel as much of an emotional connection with even King Kong as, say, 2005's King Kong. There's not even that much chemistry between Kong and the blonde, Brie Larson. It's really hard to really get engulfed in this film when there's no real main character. There's no real emotional connection for the audience. There is a protagonist, obviously, that's King Kong, as he is the balancer of the world. That's one thing that this movie did a little bit better than 2005's, is really showcase why King Kong is there in the first place as this kind of guardian angel of sorts. Same thing as Godzilla. He is there to balance out the bad. There is no antagonist, though. There is Samuel L. Jackson, who plays a contagonist, just like Godzilla, where the military was against Godzilla for being Godzilla, and not so much what Godzilla was trying to do. An antagonist is always a character that is after stopping the protagonist's goal. A contagonist doesn't care about the protagonist's goal. They only just want to stop the protagonist as is. That means a contagonist is very similar to an antagonist, but it's much, much more cheaper, is not layered, is not deep, or anything. So Samuel L. Jackson's role in this film is kind of cheap. It is not that deep. So there is no real antagonist. There is no main character, and because there's no main character, there's no influence character. There's only a protagonist. So when integral characters in this film start dying off left and right, you don't care that much because you're not connected so much to any character because you're not really emotionally invested in any of them. Part of the problem is because the movie didn't have as much of an introduction that it needed to introduce you to all these characters and what makes them vital to the story at hand. It doesn't have that. It just wants to showcase more of King Kong, probably because people were complaining about not showing enough of Godzilla in 2014. And I get it. I get where they're coming from if that's the case. Also, I wasn't a huge fan of the casting choices in this film. 3 of the actors are from the MCU, obviously Samuel L. Jackson, Brie Larson, and Tom Hiddleston. But come on, guys. John C. Reilly, really? He's gonna be your tour guide of sorts on Skull Island? I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I just never liked his role in this film. The character is fine, but him casting choice-wise, I never bought it. If you're a fan of King Kong, you might like this movie because it's definitely an original take on the beast. It's a lot taller, a lot bigger than what you normally find with King Kong, and that's because they're preparing him to fight Godzilla. But if you're a hardcore fan of King Kong, you might hate it for the same exact reason because it's not following protocol for the source material. This is kind of one of those in-between movies for me, where it's necessary to get you acquainted with who this character is, but at the same time, it really is just a lead-up movie for a bigger film down the road. At this point, I don't even understand why Godzilla King of the Monsters is a thing, and they didn't just go straight for Godzilla versus King Kong. I don't know why they just went to Godzilla 2. I mean, I guess that's what they did with Iron Man. But that is besides the point. My original score for this movie was 84%. I can tell you that it went down. It has gone down to 77%. 77 out of 100 possible stars. Not a huge dip, still 8 out of 10 possible stars, but it is enough to change from the 80s to the 70s. Guys, tell me what you thought of this movie in the comments down below, and as for YouTube, make sure that you hit subscribe, like it, and hit the bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. Until then, peace out.